Wise guys, it's Penny with Pennywise Coaching. I am bringing on my friend Samantha right now from Plan Your Perfect Vacation.
Hello.
We told everybody we would come in and do this live video today, so this is one of our first attempts at chatting with our friends on live video. So bear with us as we kind of learn this new format. But we're here today. Again, I'm Pennywise Coaching because some of Samantha's people may not know me, but I'm Penny Kid with Pennywise Coaching. I help people I like to say, make their money behave. And Samantha's with Plan Your Perfect Vacation, and she makes your money do amazing things and really have fun with it, right? So we thought that we had some real commonalities and things that we could share with people in how money and travel go really hand in hand, right? And so today I wanted to ask Samantha a few questions about travel and planning and, what's best practice. And we're just going to kind of have a chat here today, and hopefully you'll find some stuff that you can find value in. So welcome, Samantha. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So could you maybe just start out sharing with us a little bit more about your company and how you got into what you're doing now, and maybe a little of your background?
Yeah, definitely. So a little bit about myself. So Samantha Schultz, owner of Plan Your Perfect Vacation. It's part of the Cruise Planners travel franchise. And I call myself sometimes a travel matchmaker, just because I help people plan their dreams and match them to the trips that fit all of their needs and desires. So every day I am working with clients to cultivate customized itineraries for them all over the world. Currently, I've been to over 60 countries. So a lot of what I specialize in, I just firmly believe that anywhere I send a client, it should be somewhere that I have been or have connections and contacts. So my clients are getting taken care of as best as they can when they are traveling. So a little bit about myself. I also have 3 associates. They also plan travel for their clients as well. So the combination of the 4 of us, we have varying levels of expertise in what we do, but we are always working with clients, and especially when it comes to budgets, which is why I wanted the 2 of us to connect. I think it's so important because a lot of people all the time say, well, I wish I could travel. I would if I only had more money. And I truly believe that anyone can make their travel dreams come true, as cheesy as that sounds, but with a little bit of planning and, even with just, budgeting everyday things, with a little bit of planning, you can make anything happen that you want. It may sometimes take a little longer than you like, but that's how you and I help people figure out how they can get to where they want to be. So that's a little bit about my agency and who we are.
You could spend all day, every day sharing stories, I'm sure, about the places that you've been and that you love or don't love and what you've learned about that. But and you can sprinkle those in here as needed, or people can reach out to you, because I know you're really knowledgeable about the pros and cons for different places and the prices of those and the value that you get out of a certain trip. So I'm guessing that people sometimes think they want to go one place that after talking to you, some things may change, right?
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know. And for some of us who have not traveled a ton, certainly have not been to 60 countries, it's really, I think you're a wealth of information to people. And my personal experience in working with Sam, it's been that she's helping us plan a big bucket list trip for us to go next summer on an Alaskan cruise. And you have been really valuable in helping us kind of know maybe the ins and outs and how to make that fit with the budget that we have set, right? And so huge. What's the favorite part of your job?
Well, I think for one, I really started my agency out of obviously a love for travel, but really just wanting to inspire people to see the world. And I think whether or not people book with me or book on their own, if they're comfortable doing that, I just want to see people get outside of their comfort zone, get outside of their bubble, and see new and different places. So I think that's the most fun, is just seeing, especially for the individuals that maybe haven't traveled quite as extensively, or they are going to somewhere new that is completely different, and just seeing the excitement that comes, I mean, just from the planning process alone, and then obviously getting to connect once they get back from a trip, I think is really rewarding. And to your point, a lot of what I do, when I'm working with clients, they'll come to me and say, I think I want to do, this or that, or I heard from a neighbor they had a really great time, in this country or this city. And a lot of times after getting to know my clients, because I really value that relationship building time and that being able to find out more about them personally, we either do discover that it might be the perfect destination for them, or sometimes they say to themselves, you know what, even though, my best friend or my next door neighbor really liked this destination, it actually doesn't sound like it would be right for me. So really making sure that people are getting matched to what's going to be best for them, or what's going to be best based on what they want to get out of a trip. So sometimes people want trips just to relax and rejuvenate. Sometimes they're more on the go and they want to adventure. And, you can do both. You could do one year and one another year, but figuring out what's the end goal and what you want to get out of the trip. Or I would say, what do you envision when you come back home from your trip, that all of the memories that you have, that's how we're planning. And really when I'm working with clients, it's not just let's determine where you want to go and get you booked. What I love the most about what I do and what I find most rewarding is just, the entire process. So, working with the client to find the right place, getting them prepared to travel. And then of course there's always that support while traveling too. Because I think a lot of times people especially after you've saved and you've created that budget and it is a big investment, but knowing that you're not alone while you're traveling and really making sure that they feel supported and that they can just go and have fun and not have to think about a thing when they're there, and not have to think about, well, I've spent all of this money. What if I don't know what to do? They always have support from me.
So you're kind of like I am, where you're on speed dial for your people if they need you in either on the trip or right before, right after. You're pretty accessible, where you're not an 800 number that people have to, get on and hope that somebody's actually going to care about whatever they're dealing with on their trip, right?
Exactly. And they're getting to talk to the same person every time. We already, just like you, we have a relationship. But I think too, they always have access to me. And then when they travel, I always make sure they have access to a local team. So someone that's in the same time zone, even though people can wake me up whenever they need to, but just knowing that you have people on site in location, that if you need anything as well, I think is pretty, pretty valuable, again, especially when you're going somewhere new and it's a little unfamiliar.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine all that you can help do, because I don't think I even have a point of reference to do that. What do you think, how do you help clients enjoy what you teach without them breaking the bank? Because obviously I'm all about making sure that it's planned for and that it fits in line with other financial goals. But what else, how do you help them do that?
Well, anytime, someone comes to me and says, hey, I'd like to take a trip, or I've been thinking about going, to this destination. We do, start the conversation with, why do they want to go there? Why were they inspired? Are there specific things that they want to see and do? What's the significance of the trip? But then obviously we do get into conversations about budgets, because, a lot of people don't know, trips, the sky is really the limit when it comes to how much you want to spend, and everyone likes to travel a little bit differently. Not every trip has to be, luxurious or expensive. And really, even that word luxury, it's kind of interesting, because what is considered luxurious to one person may not be to another. And so I think that's where budget really comes into play. A 3 or 4 star hotel to one person may feel super fancy, especially if, maybe they like just camping regularly. But to someone else, if it's not 5 star, then it doesn't feel like vacation to them. So discussing all kinds of different things around, what their budget is, what they're going to be comfortable with. And I think from there, that helps determine too, either do we need to switch destinations depending on how soon they want to go and if they have the budget that fits it, or do we need to take a look at, potentially planning farther out and saying, all right, well, you've got this budget right now, looking at where you want to go, what are flights, what are hotels looking like, all of the different components. And then from there saying, we might need to push it out another 6 months or another 8 months, and really getting a plan put in place. So kind of like to what you do, you know, when you're reaching goals, whether it's to purchase something or, you know, to help pay off some debt. Sometimes, you know, we may think we can do it in 6 months. It may take a little bit longer, but I think that's where just, you know, the farther runway that we have to make that planning process happen definitely helps with being able to achieve their goals.
That fits in with one of the questions that Ricky asked. She said, how far in advance should I be planning a trip?
Yeah. So that I get that question a lot. I never like saying it depends, but it does depend sometimes based on destination. There are some destinations, especially due to popularity. I always recommend, if you know it's a popular destination, or that's kind of where I do consultation calls, I can talk to people and walk them through that. But sometimes a year in advance is great. Sometimes, depending on destination, you know, 7 to 8 months is a good sweet spot, only because there are some places where, you know, hotels are not going to start opening up availability, or we're not going to get our best pricing until it gets into the time frame. So again, it kind of does depend on destination, but I work with clients, like I have clients booking into 2021 right now. Now, airline schedules for certain times, or actually for most of 2021, are not even published right now. But what we can do is we can take a look at, well, what is everything costing for all the land components? And then we can also say, all right, let's take a look at what airfare has been looking like and use it as a ballpark. And that helps too, just from saying, all right, based on this ballpark budget, do we think we can still stay on track for planning the trip when you want to? So I think there's still ways for us to do a little bit of guesstimating, and we can plan things again, year out, 2 years out, again, just kind of playing on pricing today, and then saying, all right, we can estimate that it will be around this price then. Obviously have to get more exact pricing as it gets closer. But I think, you know, if someone says, all right, 5 years from now, I'm taking this bucket list trip, we can definitely say, all right, I think right now you're going to want to start saving, you know, $300 a month to put away. And maybe once it gets a year and a half out, we can really start looking at options and see if we need to make any adjustments from there. And one of the nice things too, you know, speaking of putting money away, you know, obviously you'll want to have the majority of it saved in advance. I never like to see people put trips completely on credit cards. I know you don't as well, because there's nothing worse than coming back from a trip and being stressed about how am I going to pay for this. But once a trip has been deposited on, you know, working with an agent, we are then able to help with making payments. So it isn't something where you still have to worry about having all of that money in a savings account. So once you make that, you know, usually it's either a set amount or it might be a percentage of the cost of the trip depending on where you're going. But from there, we could say, all right, we're going to make $500 a month payments on it. And then that way, by the final payment date, you have the entire thing paid off. So there's a lot of options that can also be, you know, be used prior to, you know, a year out from a trip. That way, again, you're not having to worry about anything once you go.
How soon are you locked into that? Like, most of us don't know what's happening a year and a half from now, like, right? Family stuff comes up or illness. What kind of flexibility do you have when you're planning something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, there's always different things going on, world events, where people say, well, what if I can't go? Or even just within their own family, you know, hey, we have little kids. We're not sure if they're going to be sick at the time. What happens if we're not able to go? And so I do always recommend some type of travel protection, travel insurance. That's something that my agency, we always, we recommend, we always will quote and offer. Clients are never required to purchase, although I think having that peace of mind that if you did have to cancel, and they always call it for a covered reason. That's something that I walk clients through, you know, what would be examples of a covered reason? But, you know, say there was, you know, sickness that kept a family member from being able to travel, that would be a situation where you could then, you know, get a deposit back or get the money that you've put towards the trip back after filing a claim. So that, again, having that peace of mind where, yeah, 2 years from now, anything, you know, anything could happen. I don't want to, you know, potentially lose all of that money.
Right.
Yep. Definitely.
So what are some common mistakes that people make that in their travel that winds up costing them money?
Yeah, so I do occasionally hear, you know, from some people, they'll say, all right, I'm using a travel agent from here on out because I've made some silly mistakes. And they really are not, they're the types of things that any anyone could make. It doesn't matter how well versed you are in technology, whether you've booked 100 trips or 2 trips. One of the biggest things I see is a lot of people will pick the wrong dates. And I know that seems really, really like a simple mistake, but you know, it just being a day off on flights, or realizing, okay, I check out of my room on this date, even though it's for 5 nights, I'm checking out on the next day in the morning. I need to make sure my return flight's on that day. I see that quite often. Really starts to get tricky with flights when people want to take red eyes. So, you know, like there's, especially here in Denver, there's a lot of 1 a.m. flights. So they'll then start the trip on technically the wrong day, because 1 a.m. is a different date than what they think is the time or the day that they're going to the airport. So that's a really big one. I think another one too is, again, just not picking either the right destination or the right location, or maybe if it's a cruise, not picking the right cruise ship for you, and ultimately coming back and saying, that isn't what I wanted. And that's probably one of the, you don't want to ever think of it as a waste of money, but if it isn't exactly what you want, then why would you want to invest any dollars into it? So I think, you know, a lot of times people will come to me and say, well, hey, I found this great deal online, and I'll say, all right, let's like take a look at this deal. And they'll realize, you know, maybe it's a cruise cabin with an obstructed view, or it's a resort where the room's going to be overlooking a parking lot or something. Now, for some people, they might be okay with that, but I think for most people, they have in their head this vision of what their trip is going to be. Usually it doesn't involve that. And so you would never want to just get a deal for the sake of a deal and then go and say, well, geez, I'm a little disappointed. I wish I would have gotten what I ultimately, you know, had in mind. So I think that's the biggest thing too, is just going by price only. I think that you can definitely stay within a budget and get what you want. But sometimes when we see those things that might be too good to be true online, really got to take a look at what you're getting and making sure that you don't make that mistake that's going to cost you more money in the end.
Yeah, I remember you talking us through the difference between, you know, an inner cabin and a ocean view and this view. And, you know, sometimes it was, you know, not huge dollar differences per day, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you got to know, again, I think that's where working with somebody who's an expert and who goes, yeah, but did you think about this? Because if you want that, that's fine. But, you know, the ship is rockier on this side than that side, or whatever, right? Or this city is different than that city. So how do you get paid? Do people pay you by the hour, or how? I mean, is it really expensive and crazy to work with a travel agent?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for the most part, all travel agents are paid commission by our travel partners that we book with. So whether it's a cruise line, whether it's a resort, say you're doing like a multi-city trip, we'll work with travel suppliers that can package the entire trip together for multi-city. And we work with them and they will pay us for booking with them. Now, I always do, I personally charge a planning fee to all of my clients, and really, I mean, for one, I think that, you know, as I mentioned, the level of expertise and support that I'm bringing to the table, you know, there are some agents that only work 8 to 5 and they're not available on the weekends. They're not available after hours. There's some that maybe haven't been to as many places and they don't have the expertise to share. But I also do that just to make sure I'm really dedicating my time to the clients that are they're serious about traveling. They're as much invested in the planning process, and to make sure I could allocate time to them. Because I feel like if I try and take on everyone and people aren't very serious about traveling, I'm taking away from my clients that are dedicated. So I do charge with that fee. Yeah, it's actually pretty nominal. It always depends on length of the trip, how complex it is, amount of components. But I also do that too. As I mentioned earlier, I match people to the experiences that they want. And there are, you know, some tour guides and some activities and things that I've experienced as I've done research for traveling. And those companies don't necessarily work with travel agents. Now, they'll allow me to book my clients, but they don't pay a commission. And I would never not book someone with something or somewhere or with some type of activity that was a perfect match for them just because I didn't get paid. So that, you know, small fee that I charge as well just covers things like that, where I want to make sure you're getting exactly what's right for you, and whether or not someone's going to pay me because they don't work with travel agents, that really doesn't even come into play.
That's cool. Do you
Yeah.
have a money savings tip that you might help my wise guys with people that are on their debt-free journey or trying to improve their finances, but still want to have some, travel experiences in their life?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I know you have your plan and how you work with clients, but I know for me personally, a lot of people ask for one. Do I travel for free? I wish I could say I did. I don't. I have to budget and plan just like everyone else. And I know for those of you that are out there, when Penny and I met each other and we first started talking, we realized we both I called it, we were both money nerds, and that we love to budget, and that's something that's of interest to us. And I think of budgeting as very much like a game of Tetris. And so for me, I find it to be exciting every month to look at, all right, I have this much money to work with. These are the things, you have your set expenses, but then when you have your discretionary money, to be able to say, all right, how do I want to take this money and do the things that make, me happy, or the things that are going to bring me joy. And for me, obviously, travel brings me joy. It's a big part of my life. And so I do allocate every single month money that goes into a travel fund. So I know that that's something is even at the beginning of the year, but a lot of people use it that time to plan goals for the whole year, or even for the following year. I may say at the beginning of 2020, all right, 2021, where do I want to travel? And I start thinking through, well, what is that number, that budget number I want to try and go for? And then working that number, divided by the number of months that I have into my monthly budget. And then obviously sticking to that plan. But I think, that's, I think just my biggest tip is, you usually, most people, they have their, you pay your monthly, your regular fixed expenses, most people always pay themselves, or I think that's the savings is the next component. And then, you have some discretionary money, and saying from there, all right, I'm going to dedicate myself every month to putting aside funds for travel and sticking to that. But and giving yourself, again, enough of that runway, instead of saying like, hey, we want to go on summer vacation, and it's now May, and you realize it's like a month till you can go with the kids, and you're like, oh, we don't have any money. So it may even be this summer saying, all right, 2021, where do we want to go? And we're going to start putting money aside now and just really working it into that monthly budget.
I think the anticipation and the planning of a trip is half of the fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, being able to the countdown, the preparing, getting to look at, if you're going to do extra activities and excursions, and getting to plan those out once the big part of the trip is booked, talking to other people that may have traveled there. But yeah, I think the whole process is a ton of fun. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you find, Penny? I want to switch the question asking. I mean, what are some of the biggest questions that you get from your clients, or do they kind of feel like when they start working with you that travel's completely out of reach, and how do you help them also work that into their budgets?
Well, I think the first thing is goal setting, right? And what's really weighing the heaviest on you. I tend to find a lot of people that are, have carrying a whole lot of credit card debt that's high interest debt. And so I don't think you take a $10,000 trip when you're paying, 26% on your credit card, because the cost of that, lingering around is so great. So, but I also believe in building in a little joy in your life along the way so that you can sustain the process. And so, it's totally dependent on somebody's income and ability to, find some gap. But most of us have some things in our budget that we could cut out if that meant we could travel, or we could, maybe we eat out less, or we aren't shopping so much, and we're not buying extras and spending every paycheck, so that you can have a little of both and you build up towards it, right? And that's, for us personally, we haven't had a lot of big travels, but we've had a fair amount of either local ones or ones where we went and stayed with family. We just had sort of the airfare. So we're just coming into that stage in our life where now we've met the goals that we had, which was to eliminate our consumer debt and get our kids through college. And now we have this open window of like, hey, we've got some extra money now because we've learned how to budget for those things. We can now budget for the trip and still be able to say, put a boundary on it. Even in our first conversation with you, we had to sort of say, even without even knowing what it was going to cost, about how much do we think we could afford for this trip. And I think remembering that this won't be the last trip, so it doesn't have to be the everything.
Yep.
Most
Yep.
people, we can say it's a bucket list, but then, 2 to 5 years from now, we're going to have another bucket, right? So
Yep.
we're going to want something different. And so feeling like I don't have to shoot the wad on the first trip, and you can grow into those bigger, tens or $20,000 trips, which I'm sure you've seen even bigger than that. I can't even kind of dream that yet. But it's like, what can we afford when we've been so tight for so long, and starting to say, oh, now we have choices because we've made the little decisions. I tell people it's, sort of death by 1,000 cuts. If you, are kind of eating out every day and you're buying everything, that shiny object that comes along, then no, you're not going to have any extra to do anything else. But if you'll flip that around and say little choices matter, and we can do that if we drop, $100 a paycheck or whatever, and then planning, it might take us 18 months to go, but it doesn't mean never, right?
Absolutely. You bring up a couple, I feel like, are really, really good points. And I didn't even think of mentioning it earlier. Yeah. Whether you're paying down debt, or you may be in a situation right now where, you're not making it maybe as much as you used to in the past. Because I know, like, there's individuals I've worked with before where they've taken some really great trips, and then financial situation has changed. And it doesn't mean that they're not going to get back to where they want to be, but that also doesn't mean you don't have joy in your life and you don't get to do some things that you want. And they may not be the same. They may, a trip may be smaller, or like, even if you think of just like shopping for clothes, maybe you are shopping at, one store during one point in your financial journey, and then you can start shopping at a different store that you want to later on once you reach certain financial goals. And I think it's the same with travel. Every trip does not have to be a certain price point. It doesn't have to be, like you said, the most expensive trip. But I do think it's important that, especially as you are, paying down debt or working through specific goals, to not see that as like, I can't do anything fun, or my life is not going to have any joy until we're able to, get all of these things in order. There's ways, like you said, just airfare, and, maybe stay with family and do some more local things, or, there's things I even believe within, an hour or two of everyone that you can get out and explore. And it doesn't have to necessarily mean you're hopping on an airplane. So I think that's really great advice. Because, I think too, even for people that come to me, just knowing that the services that you provide and how you talk, to people through, or talk and work with people through how they can change their financial situation, I think is huge. So definitely not every trip has to look the same, be the same amount. Can start small, get larger. They can always stay small, whatever works best for you. But just because you might be in one financial situation right now doesn't mean that that's not going to change in the future. So I think, that's a really, really great point that you bring up.
Do all of your travel arrangements have to include leaving the country?
So personally for me, I specialize in international travel. I also do Alaska and Hawaii. I find that for my clients, they can get the best out of me by booking international travel, just because that's where my expertise lies. And also I tend to have better access to better pricing when it comes to international travel. Now, if someone's like, I just really, I want to go to Chicago, or I want to go to New York, I really don't know what to do. That's something where I could definitely help them out, or one of my associates could as well. But I do find most people feel pretty comfortable with their domestic trips, being able to get online and book. And there's a lot of online sites that do offer, good pricing on just a flight and standard hotel. I also find a lot of people, for domestic, it's easier domestic than international. If they do have any type of, like, whether it's credit card points or miles or things that they can cash in, it's pretty easy to use those. And that also brings the cost of a trip down. So saving those for your domestic trips. And then maybe once, you're looking at things that might be a little more complicated in some other areas, that's where really my expertise would lie.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you're with cruise planners, but that doesn't mean people have to do a cruise.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that's kind of the one thing a lot of people get confused by. So Cruise Planners is my host agency. They're basically the travel agency that I work under. And while the name, it has cruises in it, they've been around for over 30 years, which is why I love being a part of the Cruise Planners family. We do have connections all over the world with all kinds of vetted cruise lines, resorts, land companies. But actually, surprisingly, I've had some years where I book more land travel than I do cruises. Other times there's more cruises, but really I can book anywhere in the world. So it, again, really comes down to what someone wants. But I have experience with both. I fly into places all the time and check out locations. I have traveled and I do continue to cruise on many different cruise lines just to make sure I'm experiencing those. Because even, talking about what's the right experience for someone, we talked a lot when we were going over your trip. Even every cruise line has a different kind of vibe, a different kind of feel. Different ships have, different amenities that they like to offer, and one ship or cruise line may not be the right fit for one person versus another, whether it's a family or a couple or whoever's going. So I think that's something that's really important too. But yeah, I can definitely assist with any type of travel, land or cruise for clients.
So how do people find you to engage with you and your services?
Yeah, so best way, well, a lot of people find me on social media. So Facebook and Instagram are two great places to find me. So on Facebook, it is facebook.com/plan your perfect vacation, just like it is in the little header on the screen. And then on Instagram, same thing, it's at plan your perfect vacation. Email is also almost the same as well. So Samantha at planyourperfectvacation.com. And then obviously they could reach out to you if it's one of your clients. They can always find me there. My website's planyourperfectvacation.com. So really, if you're able to Google one of those, you should be able to find me. But I also I recommend people, if you go to my website, I do have a bi-weekly newsletter. So even if you're thinking, hey, I don't need to reach out right now, or I don't know, I want to work with Penny first and develop what my plan is and what our goals are, and then I'll engage later about a trip. Go to my website or shoot me a note and I can add you to my newsletter. I've always tried to provide whether it's travel tips or inspiration or just information about what's going on in the industry. And it's just a nice way to, again, feel inspired and to know that when you are ready to travel, you also have another way of getting a hold of me as well. So, but I'm always open. I love talking about travel, obviously. I'm always open to talking to anyone that wants to talk about future trips, or if they even just are kind of dreaming or want to brainstorm. Do not hesitate to reach out anytime. Like I mentioned earlier, I just want to help inspire people to see the world. So anything that I can do to help, I'm definitely willing to do that. And I know for my, my clients and my audience that might either be viewing this now or viewing it on replay, Penny, if they think that your services might be of assistance, so then they're able to get their finances in a good spot to be able to travel, how would they get a hold of you?
Great. Yeah, and we'll put probably each other's contact information in the byline here or in the notes below. But probably easiest for me is to go to my website, which is pennywisecoaching.com, and email is penny@pennywisecoaching.com. Facebook, if you search Pennywise Coaching, you'll find that. I think the link is actually Pennywise Financial Coaching. I don't do as much on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn a little more, Penny Kid. So primarily Facebook is the main place. And then I also have a newsletter that they can sign up for through my website page. So mine is a monthly newsletter. So yeah, and just social media posts and stuff like that too. Just trying, same thing, inspiration and trying to help people stay the course, because we know that, the vast majority of people are not able to feel like there's enough gap to do all the things that they want to do, whether it's travel or something else, right? But having a plan is key for both of us, right? So that's why we felt our kinship when we first met. So thank you so much for taking time with me today. And you guys can post on here any questions that you have, or mention if it's a replay, since we, only have a few folks on here live, I think. But we hope that this was valuable information for you, and that, you'll reach out to Samantha or Penny, and that we will be able to help you along your journey to find some joy in your life, because that's ultimately what we both really believe in. So.
Definitely. Yeah, no, thank you for having me. Yeah, and I think to your point, Penny, we'll post all of the contact information, but I think for probably both of us, anyone, if you're like, hey, I can't find, you online or this or that, just, you can also probably shoot us each a DM, and you can always find out more information there. We'll make sure that you get to the right person, because again, we want to make anyone's, whether it's their goals come true, or just be able to take that next step, whether it is with some coaching financially or with planning a trip, and we can kind of help guide you throughout that journey.
Yeah, it would be fun to help somebody on both sides, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, awesome. Well, thanks everybody. We appreciate your time today, and whenever you're watching this, and please share it with your friends in your community so that we can help change the world.
Yeah.
You guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Penny. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you watching.